Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up, you are already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I'm pleased to present two of the most incredibly creative and talented and positive thinking people I've ever met. And I promise you will leave today thinking, wow, who knew? And you'll also leave a lot smarter and more inspired than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I'm a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and please make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the session. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, we could not keep this series free. Special thank you to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, MedJet, Tennessee Brew Works, Project Music, and Better Than Booze. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome back my good friend and alumnus of this platform, Ross Michaels. Ross is co-president and original founder of Park Avenue Artists, is a record producer and artist manager who has brought to the forefront talent that continues to influence and shape music culture across the globe through a wide array of music genres. The artists Ross manages include Platinum and Grammy Award winners who are recognized by the music world as leaders in their respective areas. Since the formation of PAA in 2011 by Ross and his partner David Lai, the company has been responsible for introducing artists highly influential in music culture. The company's first artist was Two Cellos, who began as a viral sensation, toured with Elton John, and became a worldwide instrumental powerhouse. Since that initial intro, PAA has established itself across many music genres. Within the world of contemporary and forward-driving music, PAA has developed and represented artists like Yebba, a Platinum Grammy Award-winning artist whose associations, features, and contributions range from A Tribe Called Quest to Sam Smith and Ed Sheeran. On the other end of the musical spectrum, PAA managed internationally acclaimed Grammy Award-winning and Sony Masterworks recording artist, violinist Joshua Bell, considered by many to be the top violinist in the world today. And believe me, folks, Ross's intro goes a lot deeper, but I'm going to stop there and we're going to learn more about him in just a moment. And joining Ross as today's featured guest is Sam Walder. Sam is the co-founder and CEO of Trala, whose mission it is to make world-class music education accessible to every single person on earth. Since its launch in 2017, Trala has raised over $15 million and has revolutionized music instruction by providing modern, accessible lessons to over 600,000 musicians across 193 countries. A computer engineering graduate from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Sam has melded his technological expertise with his passion for music. With a violin journey that began at the age of 4, he now plays 7 different instruments. His deep understanding of both technology and music continues to fuel Trala's mission and success in transforming how people learn music globally. It is a pleasure to welcome these two rock stars to our platform. Please take it away, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you for having us, Tom. Appreciate it. Can everyone hear me okay? I assume we're still in good hands here. But thank you so much to Tom for having both Sam and I. And I just want to say, yes, we'll talk about me, but this is really about Sam because I have been interviewed and I talk too much anyways. So it's really about what Sam's doing and what he's doing in the tech world and as well as in music education, which is very exciting for so many of us who love the arts, who love music, who love to learn. And personally, we are lucky that Tom named some of the artists that we've been able to develop through the years or manage. And with that, a lot of opportunities come our way, and where people are pitching us on ideas or companies or new ventures or what have you. And maybe about, was it 3, 4 years ago, something like that, maybe the like beginning of the pandemic, um, we kind of had another just mandatory Zoom call with this guy, Sam Walder. And we're like, okay, what's this guy? AI. I hear about this thing that's going to destroy the music industry. Let's talk to this kid. And I think we left that call, myself and my partner David, feeling like, man, this guy is going to change the world, not just because of Trala, but everything that he's doing. And it just spoke to us. And so we'll get into that, but I guess it's good to get a little bit of a backstory on Sam, what your personal background is, and how you came to music, and that might help inform, your journey into Trala.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ross. And thank you, Tom. And also, I see a bunch of people in chat already from Trala, including my violin teacher, Maria. So cheers to everyone there. My violin journey started when I was 4. I was super jealous of my older brother, who's 3 years older than me. He was playing the violin. I wasn't. There's actually a photo of me with a cardboard and rubber band violin that I had made because I really wanted to be like him. And I was lucky enough for my parents to, number one, get me a violin, and number two, not make it something that was super intense for me. So I always played. I loved playing. I probably hated practicing, but that wasn't really a big deal. The whole idea was just to play music. And I think that sort of culture, they say you meet a lot of ex-violinists, but you don't meet a lot of ex-fiddlers. And that is absolutely true. So I grew up sort of in like a folk and bluegrass background. But then, I was pretty good at it. So I kept playing, started taking classical lessons with like your standard local violin teacher. Took that all the way through college, played in college, and then started Trala right then. So music has never really left me.
Wow. And so how did you come about Trala? Like, how did this kind of form in your mind?
Yeah, so um, I've got the violin background. The other side is STEM. I was really lucky to get an early start there. So I published my first paper when I was 15. And when I went to school, I studied audio signal processing for computer engineering, specifically around musical instruments. So I really wanted to meld something to do with my love for music and with technology. And so I got to study in the lab of the guy that sort of started the field of signal processing for musical instruments, who's a guy named Lippold Haken. Those who are into synths and whatnot might know the Haken continuum. That's what he built. And so I was in his lab and I developed this technology that listens to you play an instrument and gives you feedback on what you're doing. And I was just doing this sort of for fun, but also more deeply, I was seeing that most of my friends who I had grown up playing music with had quit or they'd become professionals, and there was nothing in between. And it just felt like a shame because everybody picks up an instrument pretty much, and then the vast majority of people quit. And so I thought, okay, if there's some way to build something that allows people to have a better time learning, have a better time practicing, then that would be a worthy thing to build. Everybody else in my computer engineering class was going to work at Facebook or Google and stuff like that, which, by the way, at the time that seemed like a great route. And obviously now we think that they're all evil. But at the time that was like, oh yeah, like I want to go work for Google. What an amazing job. But that didn't really seem right. I wanted to do something that directly impacted people. And so for Trala, it all started with this idea of accessibility. Like, could we make music education a little bit more accessible to people? And so we built this app off of this technology. It was my college roommate and I were one of those like shitty dorm room startups. So we launched this app where you could pick a song and then you could play and you get some feedback on what you're playing. And we launched it, and our original idea was, let's make $800 a month so we can live in Champaign, Illinois, and eat Burrito King every day. And then like 500,000 people downloaded it, and it turned out there were violinists all over the world that really wanted to start learning, and most of them were beginners. They weren't people that were, the 6-year-old whose mom is forcing them to learn Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It was somebody who like truly wanted to learn from Bolivia or from South Sudan, and they had no access to music education. And so it turned out that we had sort of hit on this thesis that if you make music education more accessible to people, more people are going to start learning instruments.
What makes music education inaccessible, just from the standard history?
Yeah. And I'd love to hear your take on this as well. I mean, there's so many things that I think we're all aware of. First of all, like there's tons of class and race issues. I'm in Chicago. Chicago Symphony Orchestra has 0 Black string players, so there's no representation. So it's like, okay, how are we going to get more people to, start learning these instruments that we love if we're not showing any sort of representation? And then I want to hear your take on this, Ross, and how
Sure.
I think with Josh Bell, there's like so many things he's doing. He's getting new works of music. I think, he's premiering some stuff that's contemporary music. Obviously, the thing that he did in the Washington D.C. subway showed the inaccessibility of music. But we're still teaching kids 18th century music from Vienna that the 1%ers in Vienna thought was great music. Like that's it. Right. So that seems inaccessible as well.
And would you say that, I mean, this is because there's a lot of people who I'm sure are going to listen to this or are listening now who are kind of more in the traditional music industry. And I think a long tail way of thinking about things is, well, if we have more people who are become like music educated essentially, but with instruments or just knowing about music in general, then we're ultimately going to have more music fans and then ultimately going to have a bigger music industry. Is that something you think where the two worlds could connect?
100%. I think the first time that I talked with Josh, he said, selfishly, I want to sell more tickets. Right. And I think that's not selfish. I think that's great. If we truly believe in music, we want more people to experience it. And so the vision that we're working towards is that we can raise up a new generation of musicians that would not have existed otherwise. And they start getting really good, and that inspires more people to learn. And by the way, we're going to get teachers from that as well, because we need a bunch of people to teach. We're trying to hire like 20 new teachers per month pretty soon. And nobody's done that before. We have to figure out, where are these teachers going to come from? Well, we got a message from one of our students last week saying, my dream is to teach at Trala. I thought, wow, that's exactly what we want, right? We want to teach people so that they can become teachers and teach others. And there's just a whole virtuous cycle. And yeah, they're going to also want to love music and go to concerts and buy instruments, and the whole industry can expand. It's sort of like the root of the tree of the music industry is music education. That's how everybody, comes into this. And so if we expand that trunk, then all the branches grow as well.
And there's a lot of, this is actually on your point of Josh, one of his big thesis in terms of why he supports music education, not just in terms of getting involved with a company like Trala, but a lot of the nonprofits that he's involved in, is that it's not about becoming the next music superstar, but it's having a well-rounded education that makes you a well-rounded individual. And so while there's so many programs out there, school programs are being cut because for whatever reason, many of the local governments do not view music education as valuable. Here's an opportunity for so many students to, on their own, be involved with music education and kind of sustain that goal themselves. And I guess the question is, like, maybe there's a few example that you have in mind where it's like, we just reached, and you kind of alluded to a few, but we just reached this person who never would have had a music education because they weren't, whether it's their part of the world or the type of person that they are. Could you give us some stories or anecdotes?
I would love to. I'm actually going to pull some up. And I also saw Tom in the chat saying, I have no musical talent whatsoever. How easily can Trala help a moron like me? First of all, I don't believe you. I'm sure you have a lot of musical talent, but that's actually a big part of it, right? It's not just school children. It's everybody, right? We've got, like, my 72-year-old dad is learning violin for the first time with Trala, and he's loving it. He's not going to become an incredible musician, but it's like something amazing for him. Let me actually read off. Okay, I'm going to read 2 student stories right now. These are people that we just signed up in the last 2 weeks. So Lila works in the oncology unit at a hospital. She heard a patient playing violin for everyone, and As she listened, she was crying at the patient's ability to provide happiness to the staff and the cancer patients. So she is now a Trala student because she wants to recreate that feeling for other patients. That's one.
Wow.
Let's see. James, he's a pretty inspiring Trala student. He played the violin when he was a little kid, but he had a lot of troubles with being bullied, drugs. He actually went to prison for a while, and now he's out. He turned his life around, and his wife bought him a violin to sort of get back in touch with his inner child, and he's getting back into it for the first time. So these are just 2 examples from the last 2 weeks. There are many more that I can go off of, but hopefully it's a little representative of the diversity of the people we have.
Oh, that's great. Let's go, Sam and Ross. Thank you, Cindy. And a few more. I'm in the style of Ralph Simon. I'm going to do a few shout outs because when he interviewed me, he was almost like a BBC One radio host. He was shouting out people and taking requests. So I can only imagine that I'm doing a quarter of the job that he can do. But my mom just texted me. I don't think she knows how to do the chat, but she texted me and she's not asking for a shout out. She just said, please move your hand from your mouth. So I will abide by that. Thank you, Mother. But moving on. So I think the inevitable, a lot of people are scared, hopeful, optimistic. You've been working with AI for a lot longer than the most recent hype cycle. In fact, when we first started talking, it was actually Trala was more based at the time, or more focused on AI than it is even now, I think, if you correct me. But
oh yeah,
but
we've been leaning into that a lot. Yeah.
but some of which is warranted and some of which is not. What do you think the uses of AI you think will be useful for the future, other than the obvious? And can you explain, maybe to start off, where Trala's AI kind of comes into play?
Yeah, and actually I see a lot of Trala teachers in chat. I see April, I see Liz Carlson, I see Jenny, I see Maria, Nikki, I see Peggy, a bunch of people. And so they could probably speak more to how we're using AI than I can, even, because I think it's impacted a lot of our teachers' lives in a positive way. Something we launched a couple weeks ago is called Trala TA, like a teaching assistant. Big problem if you're teaching. Let's say you teach 10 lessons in a day. By the end of the day, you can't even remember your own name, much less what did the 3rd student that I teach struggle with their 4th finger when they're shifting, right? How can you remember any of that? So you have a couple options. First, you could take notes while you're in a lesson. And so while somebody is sort of like bearing their musical soul to you, you're just watching here and typing. And that's a pretty bad feeling for the student, and you're not present with them. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is you could stay up till 2 a.m. and write your notes from memory and try and stay on top of things. And option number 3 is you just don't ever write any notes. And then the student comes to you next week and they don't know what they were supposed to practice because they had no homework, and you're trying to remember what did they do last time. So none of these are good options. This is the reality that every single teacher that teaches online has to face. So we launched this thing called Trala TA, which the way it works is 5 minutes after the end of your lesson, if you're teaching, you get an email as a teacher. It gives you a summary of the lesson. It gives you step-by-step homework for the student based on what you worked on in the lesson. And then it notes down every single action item that was mentioned. So if you told the student you were going to send them some sheet music, or that, hey, the next lesson is scheduled for August 4th at 7 p.m., all that is written down. And so this is for every single lesson that you teach. This has done 2 things. First of all, it's decreased the amount of like admin work that teachers have. So that's been really helpful. And the second thing we found, and this is something we didn't even expect, but has been very beautiful, is teachers are able to be more present with their students in lessons because they don't have to worry about taking notes. This was completely impossible until 6 months ago. And this is the first thing we launched. We've now launched 3 AI apps, the third of which just launched like an hour ago. And maybe I'll talk
Congratulations.
about it a little bit. Thank you. Actually, it's funny. I was on a call yesterday with Jack Altman, who's If you've been following OpenAI, Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI. They developed ChatGPT. Altman Capital is a major investor in Trala. So I was on the phone with Jack Altman, who also runs a unicorn startup, and he's saying, you guys are like really killing it on the AI front. And I was thinking, gosh, like, are we? That's great. I thought that this, music school would not be the people that are advancing AI usage, but maybe you've seen all this sort of existential panic, congressional hearings, bio warfare, cybersecurity, like fake videos and texts and all this stuff. There's like some existential level panic going on with AI. The nice thing is, in a little corner of the world, there is a music education startup that's using the exact same technology to help teach people violin lessons. And I think that's a beautiful thing to be part of.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's my whole AI thing. But yeah, I would love to hear like how you're approaching AI, especially with fake music and using artists and stuff like that.
Well, it's kind of always it's interesting when a new technology or something that is quote unquote disruptive enters the chat. Often people are scared about what it means for their jobs, for their career, for their livelihood. And I think the music industry, as many people here know, has gone through many transformations. And I'm just a little shocked that we're not more adjusted to these transformations or these disruptions, because we've been through here before. And Tom, I'm going to get to your question in a second. Saw that. What does Trala AI actually do? But I think right now it's about embracing. There's a lot of rights protections, rights holder protections. There's a lot of ways to protect songwriters, artists, educators, or emphasize what they're doing that we haven't really talked about as much. It's very much about the fake Drakes and so forth. And that certainly is scary. But if we can kind of turn the corner and find a way to embrace the tech, there's probably, in my view, there's probably more upside than there is downside, where we're actually creating more opportunities for creatives and artists alike. So we can get more into that. I tend to lean on the positive side, but go ahead, Sam.
I just have a question on that. Like,
yeah,
there's a very real possibility that within the next like 2 or 3 years, you can just synthesize audio of the most incredible violin playing, like better than Josh Bell could play, and with expression and with humanity and like, all this
I beg
stuff.
to differ. Not Josh.
Well, yeah, tell me, because I think that's a real, like, people who are very hype on AI would say, hey, that's coming and that's coming soon. Is that
a good question? I think, there's always going to be a human touch to even the most sophisticated AI. And ultimately, there's going to have to be there's a lot of training that's going on, whether it's language models or music models, where they have to train off of somebody like a Josh or a Yo-Yo Ma or Itzhak or any other, whatever the category is or genre. And I think if we are able to embrace it and get ahead of the curve, there's a way in which those artists can choose whether they want to be included as part of the AI education, in terms of, do we want to train off of Joshua Bell playing, where people can use their own version of Josh? I'm not speaking as his rep right now, but hypothetically, do we want to train off of the best performance of him at Carnegie Hall with the New York Philharmonic? That's up to him. And if he chooses yes in that scenario, then he will be compensated and protected however he sees fit. Similar to how user-generated content on YouTube acts, where it's your song is used on YouTube, you can decide whether you want the song to be used, and you can collect the ad revenue and so forth. So I hope, and I think if we embrace it a bit more, we're getting to this point where we'll have that choice. Now, will it get to the point where you may not need live instrumentalists? Maybe, but I think that has always been a question ever since we invented synths and Pro Tools and Logic. So there's always going to be an advent. There's always going to be a way in which we're going to be scared, but we ultimately have to kind of reel it back to be like, realistically, you can't take out the human, the soul in a lot of these planes. It's just how you manifest it in terms of the AI and getting ahead of it. So is that,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense about the training data. Hypothetical question, would you represent an AI artist?
um, I don't know if I have not been compelled by an AI artist yet to feel like I need to represent one or a virtual artist. I like working with people. If an AI artist gets to the point where they're so personable that I feel compelled to work with them, perhaps. But I'm not sure I can answer that question without it's a very specific scenario and knowing what kind of AI artists I come across. But
It's something, yeah, it's something that we think about because,
mm,
thinking, oh my gosh, is there going to be a point that, and we're not necessarily excited about this, but it's just a question you have to ask as a long-term business risk. If we're in the business of teaching music lessons, we need to think about two things. The first of all is, are people going to want to learn instruments,
mm,
right? If you can just make, why would you suffer, right? If what you really want to do is make a beautiful sound. So that's number one. And I don't think that's going to keep people from learning instruments, by the way. I think it's going to lead to more people learning because with like better and better synthetic stuff, the real thing gains a lot more value. So if you can actually sit with somebody and watch them play versus like seeing some AI thing on screen, it just loses all its value at some point. So that's one
sure.
thing. Second thing is, could there be a fully automated AI music instructor? And that's where it starts to get really weird and scary. And again, for us, we are fully in on human touch. We think like there's the right moment to have a music teacher. Like for me personally, I can't imagine taking lessons from a like virtual avatar type thing, but that
But one
might.
would argue that, 10 years ago, it'd be hard for you to take Zoom lessons or have a conversation over Zoom. And yet we have now come to the point where we're adjusted to that. So who knows where we'll be, what we'll feel comfortable with in 5 or 10 years. But ultimately, the principle of what you're trying to teach here is that it is going to be human. It's going to originate from a human. And ultimately, AI is there to support it and further your mission, correct?
Exactly. That's why we love Trala TA so much, is because it's not about replacing a human. It's about saving teachers time. Like it's replacing a task that a human was doing before, but it was a terrible task.
Right.
Nobody likes doing it. And so I think it's like a perfect example of AI usage.
I want to get back to Tom's question because we might have just kind of dove real quick into this, but very high level. You sign up to Trala. What happens next? Just to explain on a kind of very basic level if you're a student.
That is such a good question. Yes. What is Trala? Yeah, so our mission is to make world-class music education accessible to everyone on earth. If you are a student, you sign up with Trala, you give us your phone number, we call you, and the first thing you do is you do teacher matching. So you get a call from a musician at Trala who's going to help you get started. They're going to ask you about your journey so far. Have you played another instrument? What do you want to do? What genres? Okay, are you available at Tuesday at 6:30 p.m.? Great. So if you want to learn Irish fiddle music and you are an adult beginner and you've never played before, and what you really want to do is go play at a jam session but not become incredible, and you're a very busy person, then we have the person for you, right? We know exactly who's going to vibe with you emotionally, who has the same time. This is pretty much impossible if you're just looking for a local teacher, right? Like if what's the chances that somebody down the street fits all of these criteria? So we're going to match you with the perfect teacher. And I think we do a really good job of recruiting and hiring teachers. It's a pretty good gig as well. So then you're going to meet with your teacher, you'll do lessons, and we trust the teachers, right? So we've hired very, very good teachers. We trust them to teach a good lesson. At the end of the lesson, you're going to get your homework, you're going to get a plan, and you can then practice, if you're a beginner, with the Trala app. So the Trala app has all that signal processing that I talked about before. So the teacher can assign you homework and you can get feedback on what you're doing throughout the week, which is amazing because normally as a student, if you go to your lesson, the teacher asks you if you practice, you lie, you play for them, they try and remember what you did last week, and then they tell you all the things that you need to improve, and then you're on your own again for another 7 days. And so with the Trala app, you can get feedback on pitch, on rhythm, intonation, even some posture stuff telling you where to move your finger. Um,
So
and
that's you like playing, and it's what in theory watching and hearing you,
so not watching it just
but
through
it's
audio, we can say
signal
like, hey, your
processing.
finger is here and it should be over there. And so you need to move your finger over, and that's how you play the correct note. And you can practice over and over, and it's got a metronome. It'll show you visually where you're playing. So it can be really, really helpful for beginners to get some feedback throughout the week. So students progress pretty quickly. And then you just do it. You take your weekly lessons. We've got recitals, we've got community events, group classes, all that. And you can take lessons with multiple teachers as well. So, if suddenly you want to learn Middle Eastern folk music, we're gonna hook you up with Rasa. He's the guy. He'll teach you that.
That's awesome. You mentioned signal processing in terms of being able to identify, whether they're playing the intonation or a wrong note. Would you say that's pretty novel technology in terms of a platform having that? Is that AI technically? I guess so, right?
So no, so that's not AI. That's what we call deterministic.
Got it.
It's very like specific technology. So that's what we developed starting in like 2017, 2018. That's what launched the original Trala app. I would say yes, it was very novel at the time. We had to invent brand new things in audio signal processing. It's what I did my thesis work on. With AI, I think the moat for that is fast disappearing. So it's still novel. We still have the best signal processing. Nobody else can do what we do. But I think we're probably 2 years away from that being something that anybody could implement anywhere.
Wow.
So now we're thinking like, how do we, we need to build a better moat. And for us, that's things like Trala TA.
Is it Trala TA as well as the community you're building, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Having great teachers, allowing teachers to teach other teachers, professional development. If you're a music teacher, it's very difficult to get good professional development. Like you have to pay a lot of money, you go sleep in a dorm room somewhere, and then you watch somebody else teach. And then you're like certified or whatever. It's like, no, if we build a really good community of teachers, then we can all learn from one another.
Right. So now I think there's kind of you personally have to wear two different, like maybe 14 different hats at this point. You're developing the product, you're communicating with the teachers, the various people on your team, but then you also have to develop this successful startup, and that's a job in itself. So maybe you could just walk us through that story too, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs here who either they themselves are getting involved in music startups or startups in general, or starting their own company, or trying to look at various companies that they're looking to invest in. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that story, how it began, where you're at now.
Oh yeah, I mean that's such a big thing. There's one piece of advice that I ever got that I thought was good advice. And that was this one person. I think I was asking him for some specific help on like something technical, and he said, "Work hard and figure it out on your own." And it pissed me off so much. And there's a fire truck coming by, so I apologize. But yeah, I don't know. It's been a whole journey. I mean, we talk a lot, Ross. Like,
Yeah.
you're very, very supportive. I really appreciate that. Like, we have amazing team. So a lot of people in the chat that I would call out as the ones that actually make this run.
Mm,
It's all about hiring the right people, and that's a big focus for us. Again, if we
sure.
hire the right teachers, if we hire the right team, then this can be an incredible experience for everyone. And it's not fun to run a company with people that you don't like. So I think a big part of this is play for us. Like, we should be playing music with one another. We should have fun. We should have a good company culture that we care about.
So there's the one side of making sure you create a great company culture, as well as the teachers that you hire and the students that you bring into the community. But what about the other side, where you have to go raise money and hit your benchmarks and so forth? Maybe you could give us a little bit about that story as well, because a lot of people are wondering how that happens.
Yeah, well, I'll say getting the 6 a.m. let's go texts from Ross Michaels definitely helps. So this
You're
positivity.
exposing too much right now. Okay.
That's the point of this, right?
This is my Diane Sawyer moment, but go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, so for fundraising, I mean, we have a really good growth story. that's something, we'll probably be fundraising in the near future to expand instruments, to really take Trala to be like a name brand place where anybody on earth, hey, that's the place that you go to learn an instrument, right? And so, we go to investors, we say, hey, look, it's August, we've grown 300% so far this year without expanding the team that much. That's pretty amazing. We're like a top 10% Series A startup right now. We have amazing investors. Alexis Ohanian, the founder of Reddit, was our Series A investor. Jeff Weiner, who was the CEO of LinkedIn, was our seed stage investor. We've got Altman Capital, obviously, which is great for the AI stuff. So we have some really good existing investors, and they're very helpful. And they're all in on Trala as well. Like the student stories that I shared with you, I was literally pulling that right in front of me. I have my investor update. In the investor updates, the biggest portion of the investor update is student stories, right? So they're really invested in that as well. So we come to them and say, hey, like we're making a lot of money, we're growing a lot, and this is just the beginning. We're only teaching violin. We're only teaching in English outside of a couple students that are taking another language. Like 95% in the United States, English, violin only. And most people don't know about Trala yet. That's like if you're listening to this, you're watching this, and this is the first time you're hearing about Trala, like congratulations. Like hopefully in a couple of years, you're going to tell people, oh yeah, I heard about Trala a couple of years ago. That was crazy. And now we've got millions of people learning.
Right.
I also appreciate the people in chat who are talking about our pricing and whatnot. So Jim,
oh yeah,
we're going to make sure that we get you signed up.
What's Jim asking?
He's asking what the price is.
You want to answer, or was that answered
no,
already?
Kathleen is in the chat answering already.
Kathleen, thank you. Need some help here. Thanks. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so maybe actually you could expand on that, which is, okay, what do you think the total addressable market is for something like Trala? So someone, when you are speaking to an investor, beyond the fact that they themselves are invested emotionally and musically, what, as a kind of investment, where do you think this could go?
I'm going to give a cop-out answer and say like it's everyone. So what we want to say is the vision of Trala is that anyone anywhere on earth can pick up any instrument, and Trala is the name brand place they go to. So you go to trala.com, you click a couple buttons, your instrument is in the mail, it gets there in 2 days, your first lesson starts the day after, and you're good to go. And this works because a Trala student just won a Grammy last year and they called us out on stage, right? So that's why you started getting to Trala in the first place. That's where we're going towards. And the way I sort of back this up is I just want to say, like, the oldest human artifact outside of stone tools is a flute carved out of the tusk of a woolly mammoth. We've been playing music for a minute. It's older than agriculture. It's older than domesticated animals. It's older than the English language. It's older than math and science. Like, we've been doing this for a second, and most people like playing an instrument. So we think this is going to continue. And if we can be the ones to provide the best education, then we're going to win.
That's great.
I would love to hear from you when you're telling people, because you're always pitching to Trala to others, which I appreciate so much, by the way. Like, there's so many people that Ross introduces me to, and they go, oh yeah, he's been telling me about Trala for years. He's been talking my ear off about Trala. And so, I mean, even like, conversations like this, it's amazing. And I really appreciate, like, you do so much to promote the people around you. And I feel that specifically for Trala. So it's amazing.
Heart, of course. I mean, what myself, David, the whole team at Park Avenue Artists, Cindy, Heidi, Davey, everyone who's on Josh's team, and Josh himself, we're such big fans of you, as well as the mission of what Trala is. And that, as you can imagine, like I said in the beginning, there's so many people that approach us about so many different opportunities. And while they may be exciting or kind of like a huge investment play in some regards, there's very few that kind of fit in this small, Venn diagram moment where it's both an amazing opportunity from a business perspective, but also is trying to do something good that we all have benefited from: music education. My career is 100% because of music education. And I wish that I had only had more I had more focus when I was younger to have more engaging lessons and so forth. And the fact that you guys are creating that, there's so many amazing private teachers out there still, but I'm sure there's so many students who don't have the opportunity to access that. And it's not what I think is often associated with music education is nonprofit and, you know, charities and so forth. And this is actually like potentially a solution where we can give music education to a whole series of people who never have received it. And that's for us what's so exciting, because it is both an altruistic, pursuit, because we ourselves have benefited from that, and we know what music education does for the soul, for the spirit, the mind. But then secondly, it's also an amazing business opportunity in the world that we live in. So that's why we're so gung-ho. And you mentioned, you know, it's all about the people you work with. So we're lucky that we have a great crew within PA. You feel like an honorary extension of sorts every time we come to New York. So but yeah, that's why it's exciting. Get back to my questions though. Okay. I was gonna ask a little bit more about the kind of the role of, you know, growing and startups and so forth. You know, you often hear in the startup world, and granted I'm a bit more removed than most, but it's like it's all about scale. It's like as long as you scale, then that's how you.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have to have that kind of pressure to scale based off of the investment you're receiving? And is it about scale, or is it about kind of a focus on creating an amazing community that really is just going to stay there and kind of you're going to retain forever?
It is about scale. And this is why. It's not about scale just for scale's sake. It's not about increasing shareholder value and valuations. It's not about raising the next round. The reason that scale matters is because of our mission, right? We say we want to bring music to everyone. We want to make music education accessible to every single person on earth. We really mean that. And so if we have this opportunity to rewrite what music education looks like and bring millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions more people into a world where they can learn an instrument, if that's something they really want to do, then that's what I feel a responsibility towards, is those people, the student stories, right? That's what it's about. I want more of that. And they want it as well, right? We're not going around forcing anybody to learn an instrument, right? Everything we do is basically inbound. It's people who already want to learn. And that's what I feel a responsibility towards, is to teach more people. And so yeah, scale for me matters a lot, because nobody's ever done it before. Nobody's taught music at scale. For the first time ever, we have sort of the ability to do this. Like literally nobody in history has taught at scale. There's methods that have, you know, washed over the world, and, you know, probably we need some new methods that are more modern and whatnot. And there's just so many problems with the industry as it is. Like we just want to start fresh. We're going to get a new generation of people here. But to be clear, it's not about that just for the sake, again, of valuations or IPO or any of that stuff. Like that'll come, right? If we're teaching good lessons, if we have a good team, good teachers, that'll happen.
I get a question, a challenge I have is that while we're quite literally physiologically changing because of the attention deficit that we all have based off of our interactions with the internet and our phones and so forth, you kind of associate sitting there doing a lesson as like almost like a ancient concept, and that it's almost hard to do. Like, I mean, I have a hard time just sitting down and meditating for 10 minutes. When maybe 10, 15 years ago, that was a bit more of a normal thing for me or for other people in terms of being able to just focus on one thing. So I feel like you're probably competing with the fact that we're changing as humans, and you're asking people to sit down for whatever it is, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, and focus on one thing. Do you feel like that's going to be a challenge as there's more things on the internet, whether it's social media or Netflix or what have you, that compete with your time as well as our own sense of attention?
That is such a good question. I think that's an amazing question. Here's what I feel. when I sit down and I play piano, or I was just playing cello before this with a friend, that felt like the most meaningful part of my day, right? I felt amazing. I felt centered. It just made me feel really good. If I'm spending it was 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If I'm spending those same 10, 15 minutes like on Instagram, I don't feel that. So I think we're in a pretty good position just based on how we make people feel. I do think this is a countercultural thing, and it's going to be more and more so, especially with AI, and entertainment being more and more and more on demand. We're going to have our, virtual reality glasses, and we're just going to have constant entertainment just, straight into our brains. So
Right.
how much more meaningful is it going to be to be able to take a minute and play an instrument for yourself and others?
That's
That's
the
what
differentiator.
exactly.
Yeah. Um,
That's my
well,
thought. I don't know what if you agree with that. It could be that everybody just gets like, barraged by TikToks until they can't, sit down and hold a violin anymore.
yeah. That hasn't happened to me yet, but it's happening to a lot of people.
I
You have
love
some.
what Ross had just said in chat, by the way. And Randy, yes, we're going to expand to other instruments. But Ross was saying, often my students want to escape their daily life and activate their creative side.
There
I
you
think
go.
that's so powerful.
There's a lot of, I mean, I'm sure many people in this room feel this way too, but my hope is that music education and music therapy can be kind of institutionalized or reinstitutionalized by a lot of the major educational policies, because the idea that maybe at some point your insurance covers a prescription, your doctor to prescribe you music therapy or listening, and then suddenly we're looking at music, at the music business in a completely different way, not in a consumption model and about being the most popular, but that it's necessary for you to literally have 20 minutes of your day to have a music lesson or to listen to something that kind of chills you out or kind of recenters you, and that's prescribed by your physician. I mean, imagine that. So I hope that a lot of the things that you're doing and some other people out there kind of in the musical medical space, that becomes more of a norm. I know we don't have too much more time. I just want to ask one question, then maybe get to some other questions there might be in the chat that I can't unfortunately
This is a
see.
great time for people to just spam chat with any things that they want to say.
Yeah, go ahead with spam. Get some spam chats, Ray. I can't see the questions because Sam can, because I'm on my phone. But broad question: where do you see Trala in 5, 10, even 20 years from now?
Yeah, can we do that? Can we do predictions? We'll go back and forth.
Okay.
5 years is probably one of the longest time frames I've thought about Trala in. Normally, I think about it in terms of this week, next week, maybe a quarter out, maybe a year. But 5 years, if we keep growing at the rate we are probably the number one employer of musicians in the world, straight up. And so that means a big investment into teacher community and just a musician community, which we're already starting today, just the bare bones of it. But the teachers that are at Trala today, it's going to be a very different experience. And hopefully it's going to be like a better community where you can learn from one another. We're just starting stuff there. Until I think yesterday, maybe, it was like, okay, teachers meet directly with one person at Trala and they've got like the support crew, and that's it. Now we're starting to do something where there's a teacher community. Teachers can learn from one another. They can mentor one another. So imagine that at scale, right? A lot of people are going to be meeting through Trala. Probably going to have some marriages. You put a lot of artists in a room, like something's going to happen. I think we're going to have a couple students that have become very good performers. Somebody said Trala babies.
I know, that made me laugh.
Honestly, probably.
Maybe it's already in action without us knowing. Who knows? Yeah.
Who knows? Anything is possible. We do have an employee handbook. Yeah, I think we're going to have a couple students that are extremely good performers. Maybe they're going viral on TikTok. Maybe they are touring. Maybe they're being represented by Park Avenue artists. I think we're probably going to get into a discovery, like an artist discovery program at that point as well, because we're going to be on the front lines of seeing the next generation of talent rise up. So I think we're going to see that. We're going to have expanded to probably like 20 to 30 instruments. So it feels more universal. And then we're going to be connecting students with one another so that they could play music. They're going to start bands, whether that's in person or that's virtual. We're probably going to have a lot of more in-person stuff as well. So we're going to have probably in-person camps, summer camps, performances, meetups, jam sessions, like really, really leaning into community is how I'm feeling. And then on the AI side, we're going to be the best place for teachers to teach. They're not going to have to commute. They're not going to have to do any admin work. They're going to get students that are specifically tailored for themselves. They're going to get professional development. They're going to have this community, and they're going to be okay paying Trala a pretty major cut, because like minute by minute, they're actually making more on Trala than they would elsewhere. But because like there's no commute and because there's no admin time and all that stuff, but also because we're providing that professional development, we're providing enough value so that teachers want to keep their students on Trala. That's what we're going towards. Anywhere beyond 5 years, I'll leave that up to you. Actually, I want to hear yours.
No.
Tralapalooza, says Tom, and I love.
That's good. I mean, if the Trala teachers and students in the chat are any indication of how engaged your community is, it's only up from here. But do we want to take a few questions? Can you see some of the questions there? I apparently
let's just keep
cannot.
going. I'm seeing a lot of really nice comments from. Let's see. Oh, Jim asks. So you provide the instrument also? That is bold. When expanding into different instruments, will you also ship or loan expensive brass instruments? That's a good question. Probably, yeah. I mean, we work with partners, so you can get a really, really good violin with geared pegs, so you don't have to worry about tuning, and like a case and a bow and rosin and shoulder rest and everything you need for $28 a month, I believe, if you sign it with Trala. So it's probably the most accessible place to get a violin as well. So yeah, we'll make it happen.
Right. The Trala violin is excellent. Family plans.
Yeah. All that stuff.
What would be the next natural instrument to go into for you?
To be determined.
Oh, okay.
But I want to hear your 20-year.
What you talked about, I mean, what you forecasted, I feel like is 20 years from now, because that seems like a lot that you have to do, but I imagine you're going to probably get it done in 2 or 3 years. So I don't even know what the world looks like in 20 years ago, 20 years from now, when we didn't really have an understanding of what AI was like 2-3 years ago. But what I do know is that your core mission of doing of really promoting music education, both to teachers, both to students, and just us becoming a more globally educated community, when so many people were not able to have that kind of access, is a beautiful thing. And you'll continue to do that, whether that's tomorrow or 10 years from now. So we're really appreciative of all the work that you and the entire Trala team has put into it. I think the unique thing is that you're straddling this space where it is both good for the world, but it's also an amazing business that is growing so quickly. And we're excited. So I feel like that's a good place to wrap it up. I don't know, Tom, Sam, if you had anything else to say, or Tom, you want to
shout out all the Trala team members and teachers who are in the chat. Thank you for
yes.
listening.
I'm very impressed, and I know the audience is as well. Sam, this is really cool, and I wish you Godspeed to continue doing what you're doing, and do it even at faster pace than you seemingly are already doing it, which is fast as hell. Keep going. Ross, I just have to ask you a question. It looks like you're in a spaceship. Where are you?
Yeah. Am I allowed to pick up my phone here to show around a little bit? Okay.
Yeah.
So we're in studio that we built in the basement of a hotel. We call it Gym. And actually, the interesting story is it was Park Avenue Artists partnered with Zach Dawson and Julian Dawson of Coordinate, who hilariously were like maybe 10 years my junior or 7 years my junior. And they went to the same high school I went to. And we had a very influential kind of Mr. Holland's Opus type of teacher. His name was Jim Irwin. This used to be a gym, GYM, and now it's a gym, JIM. And it's named after him. And it's a place where you can hang out, listen to records. We're in the Walker Hotel, which is on 13th and 6th in New York, and you can have food and drink. And it's basically a music education center, music appreciation center. It could be an education center too. But it's been a great place to hang out and have conversations like this.
Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap it up. And I just want to thank both of you for what you're doing. Keep doing it. To the audience, thank you. You were richly rewarded for your time today. And I invite you to come back next Thursday. To everybody else out there, be nice to each other. And I hope to see you soon. And Sam, get to a festival soon.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much, Tom. Thank
Thanks,
you, Rob.
Tom. See ya. Okay, bye.